So I'm the only hodo between you and your bed. So I hope that you can just stay with me for the next 30 minutes without falling asleep so that, we can speed this up. Otherwise, I think that we're going to spend a bit more time in this room. So my challenge is to keep you awake in the next 30 minutes with a very boring topic, which is about networking. My name is Nicole, and I'm with Infinity Blockchain Ventures. So I give speech about blockchain all the time. Who here knows about blockchain or have heard about blockchain before? Okay, great, because I will not speak about blockchain. So yeah. So my story today is, I think it's more about my personal story of how I got into this blockchain journey and how I could do the networking better when I'm doing this job. Honestly, I have just started doing serious networking since I'm 30 years old. I'm very old right now, I won't tell you that. But it means that, of course, there's no minimum age or maximum age for you to start doing networking. That's the first good news. But before we get into the, the serious, bony parts about how to get there with the networking, maybe if I can see a show of hands of you who have been to a networking event before, like a serious professional networking event. Okay, just a couple of hands here. Right, so the rest of you haven't been to a professional networking events? Okay, so do you want to find out about how to do networking with people if you go to those events? Okay, just want to make sure that what I'm talking is relevant. So for those who have been to the networking events, what would be the biggest problem for you when you go to those events and talk to people? Those who have raised their hands before, can I see that again? Okay, can I just ask you a quick question? So what is your biggest problem when you talk to people or you come forward and meet a new person?
If we gel or we think in the same kind of band, maybe sometimes the person I'm talking to could be very highly qualified, and I wouldn't know where to start necessarily. So that would be a problem in my head. I have learned to come over it, but that still comes up. That still comes up. Yeah.
Okay, that's the first thing. So you think that maybe the person is too intimidating, very annoying, that you cannot really get on the same level with his with his expertise or with his knowledge. I think that's one big problem. Anyone else has been to a networking event before and has some problems? Okay, who is the rest? Who are the remaining people? Just raise their hands. Okay.
I think the thing that usually fears me when I'm speaking to people is the lack of confidence that I had. I'm sorry. That still, for me, it's still becoming a problem because I think that it's like I'm having this lack of knowledge that I fear that it's not appropriate for me to speak in front of other people. So that gives me a lack of confidence.
Okay, so we have two people in the house saying that the lack of knowledge, lack of confidence, and sometimes it's more about your mental state, where you think that you're let's say a bit not that superior, not on par with the other person in terms of your expertise and of your knowledge. So I think that resonates well with my story because actually before I joined this blockchain space, what I did was totally unrelated to technology. So I haven't been with a technology company before. What I did before is that, it's more like the humdrum work with fast-moving consumer goods, like NGOs, with all these kind of jobs where you can just meet, people like you, who are in the same kind of arena. We're talking about business, we're talking about networking, we are talking about, all these kind of topics that you can feel that you're related to. But then basically what I did before is that I chose a totally different topic, like blockchain, 3 years ago. It was totally a novelty at that point, and I started from Vietnam. So basically it was not in the US, it was not in Europe, where people know about blockchain. But I think my starting point was a bit different, and it was a bit difficult. And I was the only girl in the team at that point. So I'm not sure if you can relate to that experience, but I was with 5 or 7 technical guys in the same room for a whole day. Not in this kind of room, but in a very small room with the fluorescent kind of lights, where people are just kind of, focusing on the computer, doing nothing. but just like talking with a computer. So basically, you know, just coding, do all these kind of stuffs. And basically, of course, they taught me nothing about what networking, because, you know, they don't even feel like networking. So I was just very depressed at that point, because basically, of course, this is not what I imagined about my job. I thought that this is a very emerging technology. People will be talking about it, like, you know, to everyone. It's going to be something that's changing the world. But then I cannot really imagine that when I saw all these people looking at the computer and just doing nothing with it. At that point, I think that I was at the highest kind of point of, let's say, at the lowest point of depression. So I just don't know how I would do with this. I was very bad with networking before at my job, honestly. So what I mean by start by seriously doing networking at the age of 30 is because at that point, I was thinking that if I don't do something with this, if I don't meet more people, learn more things about people, then this is going to be the end of my career. Honestly, I think the first getaway from my story is that I think if you have tried to do networking before, you know, like if you have tried to do it multiple times and you don't succeed with it, that might not be your thing. If you have the luxury of hiring some other people who can be better at networking, do it. But if you think that this is the end of it, if you cannot do it, and if this is the end of your career if you don't do it, then that's where you could just start doing something with it. I mean, it is something very cliche, but as a startup, you know, you have to start very lean, right? So you have a team who can do multitasking. You might have, like in a startup, that's a very weird combination of different people. You can see like one who can really talk to anybody in the room, one guy who's just gonna sit in the corner and do the coding, and one who's just gonna be like, you know, looking like he doesn't know where he's going to. So basically, that's the general kind of description of a startup team. So basically, if you have the luxury of finding someone else who can do better than this, then let him do that, because maybe you are not made for it. But if you don't have that luxury, I think that this is a good start. This is a really good start for you just to think about something with your networking skills. Second of all, what I started at that point is that, thank God we have social media. So basically, you don't have to really kind of go to each person in this room and talk to them directly and physically, because basically you have some other powerful tools for you to know about other people before you do the networking. So what I did at that point is that, of course, blockchain at that point is not related to anything that people know, you know. So basically, I cannot really do the same thing that I did with my business, with my consumer goods, with my NGO, because basically I know no one in this space. And there was apparently no player, no stakeholder in this space. So what I did at that point is that I just listed out some topics, some keywords related to my industry. I just tried to Google, find the events, find the occasions, find the topics related to that, and I find the most people who engage with those topics. I started to make a list, and I tried to add them on any kind of social media that I have. So LinkedIn, Facebook, at that point, that's mostly what I have. So basically, when I started like to connect with these people, and I started to find out what they are doing, and that I can just imagine how I can relate to them when it comes to what I'm doing. So basically, this is not like, you know, going fishing without, you know, or like doing networking without knowing anything about you, but I can relate to you before I can even meet you. So basically, I had some ideas in my mind that was, okay, so these are the people that I can relate to, what I should do with them. Basically, this is some good start for you to, you know, to think about how to relate to them and start the conversation. Coming to the third point about, you know, some of the guys here talking about lack of confidence and lack of knowledge, what I can say is that even when I know about the technology for now, there's always something new about meeting new people and learning about other people. You don't have to show that you are the best person in the room, but sometimes it's better to be the best listener. It's best to listen and to learn from other people what they are talking about. So for example, of course, I mean, when I was just new in this space, I gave my very first speech after 3 months in the company to a room of, I think, 70 people or something, talking about blockchain, about the applications of blockchain. And of course, there are like different experts, a lot of people in the room that I know, that they're listening to me. But at that point, I just like had to keep moving on, because basically I just have to get all these things out and kind of telling the story from a different angle. after the speech, of course, I also like met these people. I also met these guys, and I also asked him about, the feedback, about what he thought about the topic, what can be improved, what will be the different kind of experiences they have in my situation. Honestly, I don't think people would be, like they would be rigid, or they would be, people are very generous with their advice if you ask them in the right way. So for example, when I ask these people about what they think about the presentations, of course they would present different angles back to me. I receive those inputs, reflect back in the presentation. I can do it better from next time. And then I have the confidence to go to the next person and asking him and making conversations and asking about, what he thinks about the presentation and so on. So networking to me at that point, it's not like networking, it's not like showing my expertise, but it's more about learning from other people. And it's always, there's something always, there that you can learn from other people that makes you feel inspired to go out and meet people, and you don't feel intimidated when you meet someone, who is at higher level than you, who is more like, of course, like who you think is superior than you, who you think knows better than you. But at the end of the day, it's about the spirit. And of course, let me tell you this, even when I'm much older than you, and let's say I have more like professional experiences than you, when I meet new students, when I meet like people who are interested in learning new things, that's always something motivating and different to me. I don't want to meet like people like me, people who want to say the same thing like I do, or people who are just like kind of, at the same level and like just make the same conversations. I think what's different is about you. So please don't think, before you open your mouth, please don't think that I have to be like someone else. I have to be like someone who knows about this topic like 1,000 times better than everyone else. I have to be like a very good speaker. I have to be someone like this and like this and like that. Because the moment when you think about it, you are not in here and you are not you. You are trying to be someone else that you are not. And basically, that's not very motivating. That's not very like attractive to the other person. What I'm interested in the conversation is you. What you know, what you think about the problem, what you think about the topic. And basically, please, so that's what I mean by please don't try to be like someone else, read other people's stories, quote other people's lines, and think that it's great. I think at the end of the day, it's you who is already different. And then when you meet other people, just please be a passionate learner, and please just get it out there and be real you, and make good conversations. It's not about the quantity, but it's more about the quality. I mean, it applies to anything, especially with networking and conversations. And when you walk out of a conversation, even like, let's say in this room of 1,000 people, if you can walk out with 2 or 3 interesting, engaging conversations, and you can continue that discussion afterwards, talking to that people, I think that you would just feel, like satisfied, and that's already an achievement. So basically, what I mean in this kind of networking and the secret sauce of bonding is that it's not a secret at all, but it's very simple. But just that people just neglect the basics. They always want to think about something else and something very different. I was there because before, in all of my previous works, I failed terribly at this networking. I always think that, of course, I have to learn all these things. I have to watch videos. I should follow other people. And of course, I just forget that I am who I am. And basically, when I changed this direction, when I started doing networking with my current job, when I look back and I just wrote genuine interest in what other people are talking about, what they are doing, then basically that makes the difference. And that makes me, and that makes me someone people can remember after the conversations. And again, just to be clear, so the confidence is not something there. Of course, it takes time to build up. So of course, you need, time to meet more people. Events is a good thing, but of course, like, meeting people from face to face, even after you are connected on social media, but meeting people like face to face, getting some personal connection, even in this society, even this social media era, it's very important. And I would rather to have like those connections, those quality connections, and then they're going to take me to more quality connections by the referral. That's going to be even more important than, giving out your name cards, like to everyone else that you meet, and then nobody is going to remember you the next day. So I think that, of course, this thing is going to take more patience. It's going to take a lot of efforts, but it's going to be very rewarding if you put your heart and mind to it. And with my personal stories, of course, I don't stop doing networking after all, of course. But basically, from the people that I know, of course, they will refer to other people. And then they would come back to me one day, and they would, of course, all these connections are going to be somehow related to the other. And basically, at the end of the day, you can see the reward. You can see the reward when you put your heart and mind to it. So please, if networking is something very important, very critical to your job, please do it seriously from today. And please just, don't treat it as social media connection. Yes, social media is the start, but please just grow more connections from those social media. And please grow those connections seriously. And one day it's going to come back to you. I think that I've been rambling a lot about it. Just to recap, I think that, well, first of all, basically as a startup team, if some of you have startup experiences here, so yes, please know your strength. If networking is not your thing, I would recommend not to. Please try to do it, retain it minimum at basic level. You can have better persons to do it. But if that's something very critical, if you cannot afford other people to do it better than you, then yes, please just start from today. Second of all, leverage social media just to get to know the person better and to follow up with them. So please just don't post or boast about, your life, your pictures or some things like that. I think social media is very important to paint you, to give you an image, professional image. So use it wisely, just to look professional, and then to build your network even through social media and follow up with people. The third thing is that, of course, just be you. Just, try to, of course, learn more and be yourselves. Please don't try to be other people, and put your heart and mind when you do all these kind of networking. I would say that if you start from today, just please list out 5 people that you want to be connected. Just put yourself into a very short-term and very small challenge. Within 1 week, how can you get connected to 5 people in this sheet? From these 5 people, how can you ask them, how can you build a relationship and ask them to refer to other people? So let's grow the list to maybe 10 people or 7 people in the next week. And then from then on, you can just add on more people into your circle. Okay, so if you can go to events, that's a great opportunity to meet more people. But if you can't, let's just strive with some small targets, like on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, for example. And I can tell you, after 1 month, you can already see the difference. And yes, you have so much time ahead of you than me. I'm pretty sure that you will be more successful than I do if you put your heart and mind to it. I guess that's mostly what we can start with from today. If you also want to know more about how to do it, how to, let's say, improve your networking skills, I'll be at your disposal. And I'm, of course, on Facebook if you want to connect to me and ask me more questions. I'm not the best person who can do networking, but I think that what I do is that I learn from the job. So this is not something from Google or from video, but this is something that I have been through. So I would not, hold back or save anything. Of course, if you ask me any question or if you need more tips about this, I'll be happy to share more if you want. I think that maybe that's enough for this session. If you have any other questions, please feel free to post forward. I'll be happy to answer. Anything about even blockchain or networking skills. If everyone is still awake in here.
All right. Louder.
Okay, building on how you said to have a deeper and meaningful conversation. So in an event I want your take on this. So there's 100 people in an event, just like here. Would you rather try to get to speak to everyone, like a speed dating kind of thing, and maybe tomorrow you don't remember 90% of the content, or would you rather speak to, say, 5 as you played on, and just build on the conversation next day, the following day, and have a deeper understanding? What is your take? Which one would you choose? Would you speed date through 100 people, and yeah, hello, 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 I know you, and then I don't know you. Or, yeah, I know you, man, I know what your aspirations are, I can build on your idea, and yeah, I remember that thing, and maybe I can contribute as a feedback. So what would you do, and what's your take?
Sure. Anyone here has been to a speed dating? Please don't be shy, this is not recorded. Okay, so no one here has been to a speed dating. Maybe because you don't think it works. Maybe. I would say that speed dating is just like a gambling thing. So basically, when you just do that, of course, like there's a high chance that you might meet someone you click. But most of the time, of course, I would say that 80% of the time, that it's totally worthless to my point of view. What I would do is that I would still stick to my let's say my approach or my way of getting meaningful connection with 5 people. But for the rest 100 people, so I mean that basically I could get connected to them in another way. So you cannot really like have meaningful conversations, I would say over 5 conversations in one night. That's totally impossible. I have tried it myself, even with a 2 or 3 hour event. People might get drunken, people might just talk to many people, and they will not remember you at all after the event. So I mean that happens, right? Especially with networking events. But there are some other ways that I can help. I mean, of course, if you have time and talk with some people more properly, of course, 5 people is enough. But if you could also, of course, can exchange name cards, the Facebook, exchange something else, and save those contacts later on so you can have some clues and can discuss, can study them a bit more later after the event so that you can just talk to them maybe maybe online in another platform so that you can connect to them later. That's also a good way for you just to grow the contacts from there. So it helps you guarantee that, of course, I mean, you have to maybe reach a nice balance between having 5 meaningful conversations and maybe also like giving name cards to some random people, adding some random people on Facebook. That will help you. I would say that 50% of the time, 50% of the contacts might be rubbish, like you have nothing related to them. But I would say that the 50% of the rest, it does not stay there. It's going to be multiplied by 2, by 3 times later on, and you don't even know about that. And that's a very good way for you to grow your social network as well. So let's say LinkedIn, Facebook, if you have mutual friends, mutual connections, that's going to guarantee that you can be connected to more quality people. So yes, 5 quality people, 10 random contacts, digging out, like let's say 20 other contacts which are connected. I would say on a weekly basis, you can get connected to maybe 35 or 40 people at least from one event like that. If you can do better, then that's going to be multiplied much faster. So that's what I would do.
So it's the compounding effect.
Yeah, it's a compounding effect.
Okay.
So yeah, you're welcome. Any other question? Please don't feel shy. I mean. Okay, so we can open topic to dating, networking, blockchain. Anything else?
Yeah, so I have tried going to multiple, pitching events and networking events. But the one thing I, mostly feel is that means I want your tips on this. How do you come up with the shyness inside you? Means if you're shy to ask someone, or if you're afraid that what that person is gonna think about your idea, or about your skills you have, or means how do you come up with, come out of that fear or that shyness?
Okay. There are a couple of ways to get over it. First of all, I don't have high tolerance, so normally I might have a bit of beer before the event so that I can just like be more confident. That does not apply to everyone, but basically, I mean, because most of my events where I've been to, it's like networking event after working hours. So basically, you also have to talk with people when they're not that, kind of sober. But that's also like a good tip for you, because basically that's also a good way for you to have like more casual conversations. But I think that the shyness inside you, of course, it takes time. But what I would think is that normally, let's say at the events, let's say if you can imagine in an event, there are a couple of settings, let's say, different group settings. You might have some different groups. You might have 2 people talking nonstop to each other from the beginning to the end. You might have some shy people standing in the corner doing nothing and wishing that nobody has seen them leaving the party. So for example, some things like that. I used to be like that, so I knew how it felt. But then when it comes to the shyness, I think that of course it cannot be like rectified in one day or two. But what I would say is that normally I would not go out right there and talk to the first one that I see. But it's more like you need to see the whole kind of event scene and maybe target more vulnerable people. I would say for the group, it's safer when you join the group. Because basically when you join the group, you don't have to really immediately start talking. You can just listen to other people, what they're saying, what is the topic out there. You can just join them, show some kind of, nods, like looking that you are just agreeing to everything that they said. I mean, it's really easy for you to be in the group like that. And people will there's always someone who can speak for you. So basically in the group, you can just like start like that and you can just like, okay, so you can just clear out, okay, this person, I can really talk to him more about this, that person can really talk to him more about that. And basically afterwards, so you can just like maybe split up and talk to them a bit more. So that's an easy way to split this whole kind of, vulnerable people in the group. It's difficult, it's more difficult when you talk to, let's say, a single person or a couple, because of course you don't know what to say, but at some point you have to do it. From my experience, it's like, okay, so maybe like what I said, let's set a target, a very easy target. Let's talk to 2 vulnerable people tonight. So let's find 2 single people. Let's see if it works out. If you click, then yes, we can just like, continue. If it doesn't, maybe that's not your lucky night. Then maybe we can just try it out with more groups and more other people. But I would start by talking to like random stranger like that, because I know that I have to push myself in that situation once or twice to know how it feels and then know how to overcome it. And surprisingly, I mean, normally people, when they are like standing alone, of course they are seeking company, unless they are looking at their phone. But mostly they would definitely appreciate some conversations. Yeah, so in that case, I think I would try out that way. And there's one thing, you need to know when to stop talking and when to listen to them. This is very important. Because people immediately, when they get on the nervous mode, then they will just like, okay, I have to think of something, I have to think of something, I have to say something. Even if it's nonsense, I have to say something. So both people are just like, okay, so the other person is like also having the same thought. At the end of the day, no one walks out of that conversation happily. So basically, I think that, yeah, it's a nice mix of, silence and also of talking, listening. But just listen to that moment and just like feel relaxed. And please don't push yourself in the interview kind of occasion where you have to interview other persons, a lot of questions, answer to everything that he said. So just be relaxed a bit, set a kind of a target of 2 or 3 strangers per night, and just see how it goes, how it evolves. And I think that you'll get better from, from one event after another. Yep. Yep.
So I have 2 questions, right? The first is, in these different networking events, how do you sort of make the content applicable? So if you're presenting to a group of young people like ourselves, some of us are working, some of us are not, how do you speak to the individual who is not working, number one, and how do you help them sort of use the platform as a chance to elevate themselves? That's the first thing. And the second thing, you say you speak a lot about blockchain and whatsoever, and that's like futuristic buzzwords that are currently happening. How do we sort of bring that into what we're currently doing to ensure that we're educating ourselves about this new, I don't know, trend for now, because it's not really big in all countries. So how do we get to your level just on a knowledge basis outside of Google or these networking events? How is it available for the average person on the street?
So your first question, the first one is about like how to talk to different people of, let's say, different backgrounds.
Yeah, but in particular for unemployed people to use
Unemployed
the
people.
platform as a way to elevate themselves in their careers.
Okay. Is that 2 questions? Or is that one? That's the first one. Okay. Talking about unemployed people, well, that's a difficult question. Of course, in that case, I think that basically for unemployed people, then well, it's very hard for you just to have like let's say long career breaks, and when you come back, then you feel like you're like at a loss. You don't know how to connect to your peers, especially when you are like out of the job for some time. I would say that at that moment, basically, you could save some time to learn more about other stuffs. And then, of course, like from that time, I would say that if you are not trying to, let's say if you learn about something, basically you would just like have the motivation to practice. And of course, put something into practice, right? And basically, of course, there are a couple of things that you can do to put that into practice. So it's cannot only about work. It can be about voluntary jobs. It can be about part-time jobs. It can be about some other projects or assignments that you work with your team, for example. So basically, I think that if you want to elevate yourself on this platform, it's important that you should not leave any too long career break, unless you are, I don't know, if you have any personal problem or any personal errands that you have to, be like that. But most of the time, it's important just to maintain like a consistent, like a continuous kind of career path. Even when you are in this kind of self-learning, and if you want to do more training, do more study and that kind of thing, I think it helps improve your career path as well. But just make sure that it doesn't show that you have like this long career break and you're not updated to what's happening in the industry. So yes, that's very important, because once you get back on the employment market, people will want to know what kind of skills you have and how up to date you are with the industry. So that's very important. So not only the job, but if you have some posts and articles, or if you can do something like that, share articles about what's been happening, so that your LinkedIn profile or Facebook profile does not look like an empty kind of void, then I think that it still works. People would be looking at this whole kind of series, this whole chronology of what you have been doing, just to justify who you are. So I think that's the first question. The second question is, sorry, I just forgot it. The blockchain. Okay. How can I learn about blockchain? Okay. Surprisingly, there are a lot of free articles about this, even free learning courses by some other university, or like, it's all very cheap. I would say that there's a free course by Princeton, and also other free courses about blockchain and the materials. Basically, it's you have to also take sides when you learn this technology, because for blockchain, it's a mixture between like business and technology. So basically, if you want to go very technical, you need a technical person just to walk you through all these details. But then for technical people, if somehow some of you here happen to be developers, I would say that there are a lot of open source code and open source materials for blockchain that you can learn about. You can really actually like try coding, because you can actually use the existing codes of some like open source codes, just so that you can develop your own applications. So that's the good news. For business people, that's going to be a bit more complicated, because basically at the moment, at the application level, then blockchain has not become that popular. And basically it has specific applications applicable to different industries. So based on the industries of your interest, we can find out about the applications in that industries and just start digging out, more about the products in there, and then you can find out more about the business models, about the products within that industry. And then it's going to help you a bit more to understand how you can apply that into practice. And obviously, compared to developed countries, then of course in developing countries, we don't have that much material, and we are not that, we don't have the privilege of getting access to, similar materials, a similar kind of environment. But a lot of growth drivers for technology, especially also in blockchain, are coming from emerging countries. Because basically, yes, because the thing with blockchain is that it's trying to address a lot of problems that the traditional models cannot address. So we are talking about like financial inclusion for unbanked people, which happens across different countries, different emerging like regions, Southeast Asia, also in East Africa and a lot of other places. So basically, I don't think that you would have a lot of problem kind of getting access to people who are interested in solving the problem. The important thing is that basically it's going to take some time for you, and you have to stay updated to the technology because it's changing very fast. But I think that that's also a great idea for you if you want to start up a new idea, because once you apply the blockchain layer in every single product that you have in the existing world, it's going to help you to change the way you deliver the product. You might not get it at this point because I think it's a bit complicated, but blockchain is not like, it's not a totally new thing. It is a mixture of a lot of things that people have overlooked in the past couple of decades. So it's about decentralization, it's about data security, it's about a lot of things. But what it does is that it changes the way business functions. So if you have an existing business model and you look at it through the blockchain kind of perspective, then you might be able to come up with more products and more ideas. That's why I've been saying. So different from other technologies like AI, or big data or so on, because of course you need specific hardware, specific types of business model to go with it. If you are running out of ideas, I would recommend you to read something about this blockchain, because it's going to help you to maybe shift your mindset a bit, your way of thinking a bit. And maybe you would not need blockchain, but you would be able to come up with different kind of models and different ideas that you won't be able to think that within the traditional space. That's my recommendation. Of course, I can give you more recommendation in case if you have anything more specific. Because of course we've been trying to consult a lot of businesses to apply blockchain. So if you have anything in mind, if you think that it can be solved with blockchain or not, I would be happy to advise you further on that.
Yes, I think that is the last question from Ms. Buna. So,
okay. So Nicole, I have a question. I know many of our participants are youth in the conference. So in networking, what do you say? I know they are wondering, when I first approach someone in the networking, how do I start a conversation? In America, we call icebreaker. So what do you recommend? And also, I am curious, because I grew up in Asian culture. In Asian culture, if it has changed now, I don't know, but we are raised saying, don't look in the eye. If we look at someone in the eye, we are considered rude. But in the Western culture, eye contact is very important. Especially in networking, if we don't look at someone in the eye, they're just gonna ignore us. So would you please tell us? Sure. Thank you.
I think that's a very good question. Icebreaker, it's a classics challenge, right? Whenever, it's not only to networking, it's everywhere, even in your business negotiations, whatever you do, especially if you are dealing with Asians, because we believe that, of course, you need to know the person before you can do business with them. And I mean, it applies, honestly, I think it applies to even Westerners for now. Then basically, they also want to know the other person better before they can actually sign the deal or do business. What I have been doing so far is normally I would start with something not related to work or not related to the event itself, because I think that the person might have gone through that question for so many times. Something like, what do you do? What's your job? Where are you working at? What's your project you are working on? Basically, I think that after 3 times being asked that question, I would just give up on the 4th person. I would not want to talk anymore. And then I would not want to do networking, or I would not want to know the person more. So basically what I would do is that normally I have tried out different ways. Of course, it depends on the person. But I think that starting with something very non-work related, and if the person is not highly qualified, I would say that some casual conversation to start with is good enough. So basically asking them about how they feel about the event, asking them, about I don't know, something about them that you know before. If they're a speaker, ask them about the sessions, talk to them about what they have talked, what the sessions for something like that. Or even like talking about the events, we can just, I don't know, or ask them a couple of questions or two about how they know about the event, for example. So something like a bit different that take them out of the room for a minute. Because, if everyone... I would say that we have to be very careful with that in some case. It might work in some case, I have to say. So I mean, that's going to be the second level where you can sense if it's okay to look to the other person in their eyes, or to give a compliment about the shirt or something. So I mean, I tried that before as well. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So this is I would say that the safe thing is just to get out of the room, have some questions so that people can just temporarily forget that they are in the room, that they are in the event for a bit. And of course, there's some ways like what you said, giving them some compliments about their costume, their hair, or some things like that. I would not say that you have to sense if it's okay or not to do that, because some people might feel a bit intimidated if you do that. How about the guys? Will you say that?
Professional, Rajesh.
I would stay away from it as long as till I know the person and I know she's comfortable talking to me, or so after the first icebreaker is done and you have gauged each other, then maybe you could even say something. Even then, I think it is still risky. Yeah. I don't know what you think.
That's quite confident, too confident, I would say. Normally, we would go with something very safe to give compliments, like hair, jacket, bag, tie. For the guys, I don't know, maybe like glasses, or. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's safe, but as I said, because if you want to do something different, if you want to start it differently, then maybe, for my case, I would not start with those questions. It might follow later, but then just to get the person to be comfortable a bit, and just temporarily forget that we are having a professional conversation. I would want to divert them a bit, distract them a bit with something else, so that we can come back to more professional questions later on when it's more, relatable, when we feel more relatable, more connected. So that's how I would be doing it. People might have their own ways, but that's how I've been doing it. And also for the eye contact, I think that of course it depends. If you spend some time watching or observing the person, you might know if he or she is comfortable with eye contact or not. So it's safer just to maybe to be not the first person, but maybe the second person to come forward and talk to them. So you know that whether that person might feel comfortable with, casual kind of conversations or with eye contact or some things like that.
But hold on, Nicole. I'm sorry to interrupt, but as I know in the Western world, even we, they don't care whether we grew up in Asian culture or not. If we don't look them in the eye, they're just gonna ignore us. So is it the same way here, or it's okay not to have an eye contact in the Asian world? But also remember, this is a global world. We don't know who we are interacting with, so we don't want to miss those opportunities. So is our culture and the business culture, is it changing, or is it still we don't look anybody in the eye? I think it will be very important for our participants to have a clear understanding of that, because they are our youth leaders, and they will be interacting with all people from all different backgrounds.
Sure.
So best thing is do's or don't. If they look someone in the eye, are they being disrespected? Does that make sense, participants?
I don't know much about, let's say, other kind of cultures. In my cultures, for example, looking into other people's eyes constantly does look weird, but here and there is okay. One of my tips is that because I also do a bit of dancing, there's always this awkward moment where you have to dance with a partner and you have to look sort of at him in the eyes. But but it's also very weird if you just keep that eye contact and just like move your body like that. And sometimes it's also a bit kind of misleading. It gives the other person like wrong impression that maybe there's something wrong going on, or maybe so something's wrong going on. So one of our tips is that better not look at the other person in the eye, but maybe either look at their nose or look at their chin, depending on their height. You create the impression that you are looking at them, but you are not actually looking at them. And it's easier and more comfortable for you when you look at the other person's not in the eyes, but somewhere like, in their face, so that you can just have the impression of talking to the person, but you don't feel that awkward. So I think it works for me even in dancing where you have to constantly, face the other person. So I think it definitely works well when I do all these networking. So yeah, basically with the guys, I would not do that directly. But later on when you feel more comfortable, yes, you can look into the other people's eyes. So that's my take. Thank you.